Good morning. I work for Uniting at the Grovedale office, which is the corner of Reserve Road and Torquay Highway. I've been doing it for about 6 years, and Ro over there is another person who works there. It's an emergency relief centre for Uniting, and we have people from all over, Surf Coast, Grovedale, Norlane even, and beyond coming for assistance for us. We open on for emergency relief, we open on a Monday, Wednesday and Friday. We start about 9:20, we finish about 12. So anyone on a Centrelink payment at all can come to us for emergency relief. And emergency relief consists of food that we can give people on a point system from our food room, which is a small grocery store, if you like, with fruit and veg and bread and everything there. A lot of your, well, all of your very kind donations goes in there. We also give out a food voucher with an amount on it which they can use at Food Bank in North Geelong and Geelong itself. And between the two food banks and our food room, you probably get $100, about $100 depending on how much the food costs to come into us, and then another $100 or even more from Food Bank. Also, there are some prepared meals which people find particularly helpful, especially if you're homeless. The vouchers are paid for by Give Where You Live, and we give them out about 3 per every 6 months. So 3 vouchers per client every 6 months, over that 6 months. So they can choose when they want to come and use it. So fruit and veg is free and bread is free, so that sort of takes care of a fair bit of the shopping for a lot of our clients. There are only 2 paid employees that I know of at our office in Uniting, and the rest of us are volunteers. So that's about 200, 250 volunteers. Comes and goes a bit. So some of the roles there are reception, answering the phones, keeping a track of things on computers. You do need a little bit of computer literacy, which I found a little bit of a challenge, but we're getting there, aren't we, Ro? Yeah. So other roles are doing some data entry, doing some newsletter, some communication work, but also in the food room, they're setting up all the food, keeping it up to date, putting things on shelves and then serving the clients. We also can give out, when we have them, fuel vouchers, which are like hen's teeth. With fuel prices got extremely high and people found it very difficult to run their cars. We also have pharmacy vouchers sometimes. Again, we use them pretty quickly, so we don't have that many of them at any given time, but they are very useful. People can have the medicines they require on NHS. It has to be NHS, PBS. I was watching an ambulance program last night. It's for the normal medications, not the very expensive ones. Our clients usually come into us. We are the absolute last place they want to be. They're coming very tearful sometimes, in great trepidation, don't know what they're going to hit when they come in our front door. And it's a really big step for them to come in and ask for help. How they find out about us is fairly interesting. Generally word of mouth. And if they're in church, yes, they hear about us that way. But generally other clients will tell them, hey, if you're out of food, you go down to Grovedale and get something from there. The last 2 times I worked, I work every fortnight, just once a fortnight. The last 2 times I've been there, I have had 5 people to see, 5 clients, and out of those 5, 3 have been escaping domestic violence. One was someone my age. Well, I burst into tears with her immediately when she told me her story. She'd been abused by her husband for years and years and years. She'd finally got away. He found her. They always seem to have ways and means of finding them. Anyway, she came in for food and we were only too happy to help. We also had put her before in touch with the Salvos and she was going to get a nice, safe place to live. Another client on that day was a young mum. 3 little kids. She'd escaped from New South Wales. She'd been planning this for about 2 years, she said. She waited for her husband to go. She'd been beaten to a pulp by this guy, broken nose, broken cheekbone over the years. 3 little kids, 10, 8. I think the little one was only 3. Anyway, she waited for him to go out on a fishing trip, and she'd had packed the car, ready to go. She'd always had things packed in a cupboard. Packed the car, came down, and went to the police. They said, get as far away as you can, he'll find you. Anyway, she came down, and she came straight to us. The social workers in New South Wales must have told her, if you're going, go right to Geelong, keep going, you'll find Uniting. She came in, we were able to find her a safe place through the salvos again, and then we were able to help her set up a little flat. So we have material aid, we have furniture, we have some bedding, we have utensils, we have small appliances that we can help people set up a home or a flat. And she was incredibly grateful. And since then, I hear, I'm not there all the time, she's come back and she's got some sort of a part-time job, which is great, and she's managing, the kids are going to school, so all that stuff. But she told me, he'll find me. This guy had also been in jail. When you're in jail, you think you'd be safe, but no, they have friends outside jail, and they'll come and appear on the doorstep of the wife, or even kids, grandmothers, if they have the kids, and that's very common, I find, grandmothers, grandfathers having to take on kids when people are in jail and mums are escaping. We have a food value that we give on groceries when people go shopping, and they find that really helpful, I think. We also do have links to other services in Geelong. Geelong Mums is a fantastic organisation. We link people who need clothing and things for kids, babies in particular. We set them up with things from there to help out. And we also have a Christmas program which is coming up pretty quickly, and that's great. So people can come into us almost the last day we're open. We give them bags of groceries, depending on how many in the family, to tide them over the Christmas period. And then the best thing in the world is they get to go and shop for their kids. So these are kids under 14 and under 16, depending what we can afford. So there's vouchers for the older kids, we have toys for the kids, we have books for the kids, and it's just like Christmas shopping. Our clients say, oh, that's my Christmas shopping. We also have special Christmas food that they can select as well. So we're all looking forward to that. I love working for Uniting. It gives me great pleasure to help someone out when they're absolutely desperate. And a lot of times they just need a good cry. And that's not part of our role, but we have tissues and we can just let them cry and we can just see what they need. And I think it's a fabulous organisation. I've been there probably about 6 years now, and your donations make an enormous difference to those people who have nothing. We also can pack hampers for homeless people, and we have swags, and that's becoming much more common, as is the demand on our services becoming very, very common at the moment. So, thank you.
Now Stacey's going to come and talk to us. She's the new programs leader for major donors in Uniting in head office. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's always interesting being part of a church service the day after grand final. It can be a little bit hit and miss, so it's actually really lovely to see so many of you here this morning. Thank you for the invitation to be here and to share worship with you today. It's also a rather beautiful part of the world down here. My family and I have spent many years on the beach down here growing up, and in the campsite, and roaming the streets of Torquay and down this coast. So it's just a beautiful part of the world. As Robin indicated, I recently joined the Uniting team in February this year. And I've enjoyed visiting our supporters and getting to know them, and visiting churches and congregations like your good selves, and hearing your story and being part of Uniting's journey. And I absolutely echo Helen's gratitude. What happens at Uniting behind the scenes is rather remarkable. Supporters, individuals, donors, groups, organisations, churches, we absolutely could not do the work that we do if it wasn't for your generosity and your kindness. And it does go a long way, Helen, doesn't it? It's amazing what happens across Victoria and Tasmania, across our various programs, with what seems like a little, and it's rather remarkable. And of course, we do rely extremely heavily on a terrific team of over 1,500 volunteers across Victoria and Tasmania that are part of supporting our neighbourhoods and caring for people. So Uniting is a big organisation. And thank you. Thank you for being a part of that and for having the vision and the courage as a local church to roll up your sleeves and be part of that and to make it happen. I want to invite you just for a moment to think about what you cherish most about your Christian faith. When I do that, I don't necessarily think of a set of beliefs or even focus on a group of doctrine. And I suspect that maybe many of us here today are similar. Rather, we focus on the person of Christ and the ways in which our experiences of God's grace have shaped and challenged our faith as individuals and as a people of God. It worked. Thank you, Trish. Jesus was someone of profound compassion, bringing good news to the poor and healing the brokenhearted. He reached out to everyone who had been wounded by life, including those who had been wounded by organised religion. And although Jesus was deeply grounded in the Jewish faith, he transcended ethnicity, gender, race, and social status. Instead of judgment, he teaches understanding and inclusion. Instead of revenge, he brings forgiveness and peace. Instead of status and rank, he embodies vulnerability and humility. And in the face of power, he brings justice and respect for all of God's creation and all of God's children. And most of all, Jesus continues to bring a deep and profound sense of hope, believing that the brokenness of this world does not have the final say. That means that as long as divine love beats in one single human heart, a new humanity is possible. That is the essence of our faith, and we cherish it and we celebrate it every time we gather together as church. Yet throughout history, Jesus always had trouble convincing his followers about this radical inclusiveness of God's message. In fact, Jesus has often had trouble convincing his followers about most things. The conversation in today's gospel reading is no different, and it takes place after an interesting or intriguing series of events. A little earlier in Mark chapter 9, we read about the mountain of Transfiguration. You may recall that Jesus and his disciples, Peter, James and John, trek up the mountain and have this mysterious, dramatic encounter with the prophets Elijah and Moses. Then an argument breaks out because Jesus' disciples had been unable to heal the sick boy of the fits and seizures he had been experiencing. Why couldn't we heal the boy? Complain the distressed disciples. A few verses on after this, another row breaks out amongst the disciples. And it's not about the serious things Jesus had just been sharing with them, things about his death and his suffering that would soon be upon him. Rather, the disciples are arguing about who is the greatest amongst them. And Jesus places a child before them and says, "Whoever welcomes this child welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. For the least among you is the greatest." John, without any indication that he had even been listening to Jesus, speaks up, which is what we heard this morning. Master, we saw someone casting out demons in your name, but we tried to stop him because he is not one of us. Which makes me wonder, has John forgotten so quickly the incident with the boy at the foot of the mountain? Has he not heard or understood or listened to Jesus' words about status and self-importance? Don't stop him, says Jesus. Don't stop him. Whoever is not against you is for you. It seems to me that the disciple John thinks that because he is in Jesus' inner circle, he should have some sort of special privilege or special powers. Yet here is an outsider, a stranger, someone not of us, doing what the disciples had been unable to do only a few days earlier. Jesus doesn't dwell on this as such. He has no time for the disciples' narrow-mindedness. In fact, his response encompasses a rather broad, inclusive, expansive view of God's kingdom. One of welcome, inclusion, and hospitality, where the powerless, the voiceless, the least of these will be first. And anyone, by just handing out a cup of water in God's name, is actually doing the very work of God. In a world where the church is dwindling in numbers and in some cases struggling to survive, how do we as spiritual people who believe in the good news from Jesus and who are seeking God's kingdom here on earth, how do we find ways to continue to welcome and include everyone? And how do we, as the church, partner with others to accomplish God's vision for all of creation, even with those who we may see as not being one of us? The African-American poet and civil rights activist June Jordan put it this way years ago. She said, "We are the ones we've been waiting for." The church today, as it has in generations before, is challenged, but we also have an opportunity of offering an alternate way of being in the world. Our job as the church, as people of faith, is not just to keep the building open or to make budget or to hold onto our assets. Our job is to bear witness to God's story in our own lives and together as God's people to make a difference in the world around us. Our world is desperate for that message of compassion and love. And we are the ones to keep that message alive. That is our calling as the church. We are the ones we have been waiting for. In today's world, that may not look like full churches, although we have one today, and the offertory plate overflowing. We live in challenging times. We have to navigate consumerism and secularism of our generation. There is violence and terror. The earth groans for healing. There is hopelessness. There is pain. There is despair. But there is also a great deal of goodness in our world. There are more things and more people in our world who are committed deeply to peace and justice and love than there are those who are against. We can grow more nostalgic for the good old days, or we can, as the church, continue to give voice to a faith that is bold and imaginative, courageous and creative, a faith that embraces and cares for all of God's children, a faith and love that inspires individuals, enlightens communities, and confronts injustice, such as providing food, clothing, and crisis support that Uniting ER centres do across our states. Or perhaps support groups for a young person needing help as they navigate mental health challenges and develop the internal skills they need to make decisions and live their best life. Maybe it looks like giving a home to a mother and her children escaping family violence. Or when a parent accesses financial hardship assistance in order to keep the kids in school, the mortgage paid, and the family together. Maybe God's compassion is embodied when someone seeking asylum and refuge in our country is welcomed with dignity and respect and pointed in the right direction to access the services and the supports they need to build a new and safe life. This happens daily at the Asylum Seeker Welcome Centre in Brunswick. Or maybe it looks like advocating or agitating our state and federal government for the alleviation of poverty or more housing to help end homelessness. Perhaps a glimpse of God's justice is experienced when someone living with a disability has the opportunity of being employed in meaningful work that transforms their life. Maybe the type of love Jesus demonstrates is experienced when someone isolated and lonely turns up at your op shop and is greeted with the warmth of a smile, a chat, and the beginning of a connection. Or when someone is at breaking point in the midst of the dark night of their soul and makes the decision to pick up the phone and call Lifeline. A flicker of hope and possibility is made. These and 1,000 other ways are examples of God's heart and spirit expanding into our families, into our streets, our neighbourhoods, our communities, and beyond. I'll finish just by saying our job, our calling as the church is to embody this radical, inclusive love of God, to extend grace, and to say to our neighbours, whoever they are, you can bring your struggles, you can bring your wounds, you can bring your deepest questions to a place like Torquay Uniting Church, because we are here to open the doors of the church as wide and as expansive as the very heart of God amongst us. We are the ones we have been waiting for. Jesus shows us that way. So my hope and prayer is that this is what we do today and always as we continue to be God's people in our neighbourhood. May this be so. Amen.